Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for some massive breaking news coming in from the Athletic's David Ornstein saying that Leeds United have reportedly made an inquiry to sign Jørgen Strand Larsen. Now, there is important to note with this, there is no formal approach, no formal bid placed yet. And obviously he's also said in this that there's no guarantee this story develops. But anyone who knows anything about David Ornstein and when he talks about transfers, his success rate from talking about a transfer in the first place to it actually happening is ridiculous. It always has been. When he says stuff, he double, he triple, he quadruples checks everything that he always says. He went on the overlap, I think, maybe about a year ago, and he talked about how he obviously looks into transfer stories, and he says he gets multiple sources from clubs directly. So he'll start by getting one source, they'll obviously tell him the story, and then he'll fact check it again and fact check it again. So you can bet your bottom dollar that there is truth in Leeds United wanting Jørgen Strand Larsen in the January transfer window. Now, obviously, if you've watched this channel before, you'll know we talked about Jørgen Strand Larsen when weirdly the odds dropped for him a few days ago. It obviously went from 33-1 to 2-1. And at that point, obviously, that potentially you think, oh, there could be some interest there. But I always felt Strand Larsen was probably out of our reach as a football club due to the PSR climate, which is obviously mentioned in David Ornstein's sort of article, but also in terms of would actually Strand Larsen want to come, because in the summer this is a guy who's going to go for £60 million looking at going to Newcastle. He had other clubs as well sniffing around him. He was a massively top target, having obviously had a fantastic season in the Championship, in the Premier League last season, scoring 14 goals. But I thought might be out of our reach in January. But it looks like that Leeds United are going for the Strand Larsen thing. And I want to say this and make this abundantly clear to everyone watching. If Leeds United, for me, signed Jørgen Strand Larsen in January, that might be the most ambitious signing I have ever seen Leeds United make in my lifetime. This would be up there, probably. Like, Rafinha potentially was ambitious, but I don't think we quite knew what we were getting into Rafinha before he obviously, before he ended up coming to the football club. We didn't quite know the player we had. Jørgen Strand Larsen, in terms of what he's done in this Premier League just last season, I do genuinely think that this is the most ambitious signing I've ever seen in my lifetime. Now, I'm only 24, and obviously people back when we were spending tons of money and we're going for the first division, I'm sure there's other signs above this. But for me, as I said, as a 24-year-old, and a lot of people watching, a lot of people at home who are Leeds United fans now, this has got, as I said, would be up there with one of the most ambitious signs I've ever seen. I mean, there is not much for me that would be against me us signing Jørgen Strand Larsen. For me, he's about 6'3", he's quick, he's a good finisher, he's good in the air. He holds the ball up well. Everything that we want in a striker, I think Jørgen Strand Larsen brings, in my personal opinion. And fundamentally as well, which is what's really important, this is a guy who's scored goals at this level before. It's not someone that you're bringing in from a different country who's never performed in this level before. This is a guy that come into the Premier League last season and hit the ground running with a fantastic season at Wolves last season. So, as I said, for me, this would be up there with probably, as I said, one of the most ambitious signs in terms of the profile and the stature of what this brings. And also, as I said, you only have to go back 6 months to where he was getting linked to. And as I said as well, when we talk about sort of the broader picture, and obviously Leeds United trying to stay in this division this year, I think if you add Jørgen Strand Larsen to this front line, because one of my main concerns at this moment in time with the Leeds United setup is, yes, everything's going well at the moment. We're playing really well. We've been on a fantastic unbeaten run. We actually played obviously really well in the Newcastle game as well. Unfortunate to miss out there. But I've always felt if Calvert-Lewin went down injured, we don't really have anyone to sort of replace that profile and come in and sort of do the job. Nemecha to an extent, but he's nowhere near this level. Whereas Jørgen Strand Larsen, I think he could come in. He actually has got a good injury record. I do think that would be something that that would really aid Leeds United. And I've got to be honest, if we signed Strand Larsen in January on top of Buonanotte as well, I don't think we'd go down there. I think we just have too much quality. I really do. Anyway, let's get to your guys' comments. Present play says, I think we can get a deal. I think we can get a deal with him with the right structured deal. Yeah, I think this is doable. And as I said, when David Ornstein talks, he always makes out that it's probably not as far advanced as he's saying. He also always makes out it's less likely. I think part of it's obviously cover his own back. You don't want to start saying that transfers are definitely going to happen, and they don't do. But as I said, if David Ornstein is covering a story, I am telling you for a fact, look back at his tweets, look back at the tweets that he makes. When he says something, stuff happens. Even when it's early stages, he doesn't say it if there's no meat on the bone. He always says stuff when there's meat on the bone. And if Leeds United are looking at it, they must have had some sort of indication that this deal would be plausible to do. They must have had some idea that this could happen. And this comes from a number of factors. I mean, I don't think if Leeds United were in a position, maybe like even West Ham were, or a position where we're touch and go with the relegation zone, I don't think this deal would be possible. But I think this deal becomes more possible with the position Leeds United are in, and they've got themselves in, where actually a loan with an obligation to buy, if Leeds United stay in the Premier League, looks much more likely on Wolves level to actually happen, because of course we're more likely to stay in the division than we were maybe before this run started. BMG says, "Sup Scotty, just came back from the gym and was pleasantly surprised to see you live." Yeah, mate, I'm usually not live. I actually normally work, but I work part-time. But actually on Friday, I'm usually working on Friday. But today I wasn't, because I did Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because obviously I can't do this full-time. I don't earn enough money from it. But I am here, and it's amazing because it's dropped at a fantastic time. I missed the Buonanotte story yesterday, but here we are. Ruben says he's been absolutely terrible for Wolves. He has, mate, but Wolves have been absolutely terrible in general. And he has just got a hat-trick. I know it was against Shrewsbury, but he has just got a hat-trick in the most recent game. And actually, since Rob Edwards has come in, if you've been watching Wolves, which I've watched him a bit, he's obviously, Noah Rockaday has been playing, I think, majority for him. But actually, when Strand Larsen's come on, he's been much better in recent weeks. Do you attribute that just to a poor Wolves team and out of confidence, or he just had one really good season? I worries about players' consistency. The problem is with Ruben. We've got to bear in mind where we are. We're not gonna buy a player who scored 14 Premier League goals every single season for eternity, because I'll tell you how much they'd be costing. They're talking 70, 80, 90 million pound footballers. We're not going to get that. So for what Leeds United are at this moment in time, this is an unbelievably ambitious deal. I can promise you of that. It really, really is. Strand Larsen / Perau exchange swap. Perau gets Wolves back up next season, says Gavin. Yeah, I think that. I think Perau could be involved in the deal, because I think for Perau's level, he wants to test himself in the Premier League, and maybe Wolves look at that. Maybe it's like an obligation. Maybe looking at an obligation to buy. And Perau in the summer, and we could maybe construct a deal like that. Perau still gets his chance to play in Premier League football. He might have more chance of playing Premier League football at Wolves. Of course, they are going to then get relegated, and they'll have to do it again in the Championship. But you'd think that Wolves would probably have a good shot of coming back up as well. So maybe Perau's involved in the deal. We know Perau kind of wants to stay, though, so I don't know about that. Right age for Leeds, knows the Prem and scores goals. It's a yes from me, 100% Miller. That's what I mean. As I said, I've been really excited by this deal if it was a player that was playing in the Serie A. But obviously we don't know how the transition works. Whereas actually this is a player, as I said, that last season scored 14 goals in his division. But he's not just that, it's what he brings to the football club, and sort of how what his sort of performance levels are like, and what sort of a player he is profile-wise. Like, this is a player that would fit the system down to the ground, in my opinion. As I said, he's strong, he's tall, he's good in the air, he can run the channels really well. He's got everything. He's a similar profile actually to DCL in terms of what he can bring. I think he's probably a better finisher on the deck as well than DCL. People don't really like that, but DCL's probably better in the air than Strand Larsen. But in terms of actually just a pure finisher, I actually think Strand Larsen might be better. It would be a good signing. The biggest void in the team right now, in my opinion, is a proper left-footed defender who can primarily cover left-back, but ideally also centre-back. If we get that as well, it'd be good. Yeah, it would. But I think if an option becomes available to sign a player like this, and this is when we talk about sort of what Leeds United are looking at in January, we always talk about opportunities in the market. That's what I said yesterday, was one of the reasons, obviously, why the Buonanotte deal happened. And I think, again, with this deal, it's an opportunity into the market for Leeds United. Leeds United were not at the start of the season thinking that at January we could sign Jørgen Strand Larsen. I think at the absolute best, they were hoping that he'd stay in the league, Wolves would have a poor season, get relegated, and you might get him in the summer. But even then, I think they'd probably expected him to go higher. But with the way it's fallen with Wolves and how bad they've been, and obviously the fact that they might look at wanting to cash in at this moment in time, maybe that's when a deal can be plausible for Leeds United. But as I said, for me, I can't take away from this. I genuinely think this is one of the most ambitious deals I ever have. And we normally won't come live, but as I said, this is such a big story. And it's because it's David Ornstein more than any journalist. It screams of what actually could happen, because he has so much credibility. And as I said, I know he's got in there, there's no formal bid and there's no guarantee the deal develops. As I said, he's doing that to cover his own back. But look, as I said, just look. The tweets are all there with David Ornstein. Go back and look at his tweets when he's looking at when players are sort of involved with football clubs. Very rarely does it even at the early stages. Very rarely does it not convert into actually being a signing for that football club. It's also a possibility that Wolves are just terrible and he looks bad. Have they created anything for him? Was BMG saying back to Ruben. I agree with you. I think sometimes, like we nearly got relegated with Rafinha, who's now the Barcelona captain and one of the best players on the planet. So let's not pretend that you can be in a bad situation and be a good footballer. We can't surely be still saying that you can. Oh, because he's in a bad team, that means he's ultimately bad. The amount of players who've been relegated or been in relegation scraps who have gone on to do fantastic things in the career is off the scale. So as I said, for me, that's where I'm at. I think if they can somehow make the deal involving a Perau swap, this is a no-brainer. It won't be a swap. It'd have to have obviously a lot of money in. If we use all the January money for him, I just don't think we need it. I just disagree. You don't get the opportunity to sign players like this very often, and I think obviously. I think there's something in that Wolves want to offload him quite clearly. And I wonder if they want to offload him. Obviously, West Ham looked an option for him at the start of the transfer window. West Ham didn't end up happening. I think fundamentally because of what the situation West Ham were in, and Jørgen Strand Larsen didn't want to sign for West Ham and find himself playing Championship football last season. But Leeds have become available and become an option actually just because of really good performances on the pitch and getting ourselves into a position where we fundamentally at this moment don't look like we're going to get relegated, and that's something to bear in mind. But for me, as I said, it's just if Leeds can pull this off, it's not a case of if you want the player or not. For me, it's a no-brainer that you'd want this player. He's got everything you want to offer as well. He's also 25 years old, so he's at an age now where I like buying 25-year-olds. I think it's around the perfect age to buy. Because you're going into the peak career, but they're not old enough to the point where you're never going to have any resale value on them. I think I always think 25-year-olds the perfect age. They're not kids. They've probably played for a number of seasons in the professional career, probably 5 or more seasons quite comfortably at that point. So they're experienced players, but they've still got a lot left in the tank. Like you're looking at Strand Larsen, think maybe he goes on until he's 33, maybe even 34. So he might have, 7, 8 years left in the tank, or even 8 or 9 years left in the tank as at the sort of a reasonable level. So if he has a good time at Leeds United, there's still a sell-on value there. Like one of the problems with the Rodrigo signing, in my opinion, when we made that signing was we ended up losing loads and loads of money on him in terms of PSR standpoint. I know I don't want to make it all about PSR because I want to make excited about the transfer, but even on a business level, going in at 25, buying a 25-year-old is always going to be better than buying a 29-year-old because you have, like, say he comes to Leeds United and tears it up and has a few other really good seasons, you might look at it a bit and move him on for a 27-year-old for something like 80, maybe 90 million to maybe an Arsenal, someone like that, if they're still winning the strike at that moment. But that's what I mean, the next progression. Or Leeds United progress as a football club. And of course, then we're in a position where we can just keep Strand Larsen because we've sort of jumped up the league. So yeah, as I said, really, really positive in that. But and I was thinking actually, because when this sort of signing came up, or was sort of this betting thing came about, and he obviously dropped the massive odds that he did a few days ago, I was thinking in my head, I think that, and I wondered about the transfer window anyway, and it sort of just brought it to my head. I think Leeds United, a lot of these deals, with this Strand Larsen deal especially, again, we talked about it earlier in the video, but I think this is a player that maybe Leeds United had been looking at if we would stay up this summer. But then he comes available in January, and you essentially just move the timescale forward, if that makes sense. So you go, well, we were going to spend 30 million in the summer. That's when we probably eyed up to him. Maybe you started having a conversation with him, and then you go, actually, it's becoming available. We might better do this in January and then get an obligation to buy. So we've almost bought our striker for the summer, but we just brought the timeline earlier, if that makes sense. Like we've seen this a lot with Arsenal, where the targets have been, we're going to get this player in the summer, and then, as I said, they become available in January, and they just move the timescale. But that does obviously mean as well, like if we buy Strand Larsen in January, that will be the signing for the summer. So that will be the striker then. We're not going to go buy another striker in the summer. He will be the striker then, if that makes sense. And you're going to probably lose 30, 40 million off your kitty in the summer naturally because you just brought that timescale forward. So that's kind of so that's something you've got to bear in mind with this deal. But as I said, the priority for Leeds is staying in the league, so we can get this deal done earlier. Even if you pay a bit more money to get him in, I think it's a really good idea. I do. I would applaud the 49ers. I think it's ambitious from them, and I think it's something that, as I said, Leeds United should be all over, in my opinion. BMG, have you watched Strand Larsen this season? He's regularly been very bad. Ruben, I think you, look, everyone's got their own opinion on this, but I think you are in the minority. Like what a lot of people I've seen online, I think have been very sort of optimistic about him. Look, the thing is with signings is that sometimes the most obvious signings, and Strand Larsen would be, if you can get him, would be an obviously on paper, really good signing. Any signing can fail, mate. Any signing can fail. We've seen some of the most obvious signs in the world fail, and some of the best signs in the world, some of the most poorest signs in the world before the start of the season, and you go, I'm not sure on him, completely work wonders. So every signing has got risk, of course it has. But I'm looking at sort of what he did last season and sort of his profile and what I watched from him last season. And even at times what I've seen in moments this season, when like in the League Cup when he scored a brace against West Ham earlier in the season. And I look at him and I do think he's someone who can be on the journey for Leeds United and be the next level of quality signing that we're looking at. I do think that's possible. And I think, as I said, when we talked about this right at the start of the transfer window as to what we might want in the January transfer window, and we always talked about a strong physical striker. This guy's, if you're looking at strong physical strikers that Leeds United might better bring in, and you're looking at what's the best outcome you could get really for a player, I think Strand Larsen's probably at the top of the tree for, he's a number one choice player, if that makes sense. You might have your number one choice you usually don't get, maybe then a number two choice and a number three choice, and maybe even a number four choice. In terms of when you look for a profile and you go, he'd be the best one, and then all the way down. I think the reason, again, that Leeds United might push this more than everything is this is, for me, a tier one signing. I don't think we're going to look into the market and buy a striker better than Strand Larsen. Like, I think he would be the top of the tree that Leeds United go, wow, if we can get him, let's go and make it happen. And again, I think that's obviously boils into why we're looking at Strand Larsen. But bad analogy, but it's like when you have 5 pairs of nice shoes, a lovely pair of gloves goes on sale. You don't need it right now, but in the future you might need it more. It's worth buying as it's enough of a bargain. Yeah, exactly, BMG. Like, for example, recently, it's again a stupid analogy, but I had some. So I play golf now and then, and I wanted some new golf clubs, and I wanted them in the summer. That's when I want to buy them. Wait for money to get a bit more up through the Christmas period. Obviously, spent a lot, and then I want some new golf clubs in the summer. But then my mates were getting rid of his golf clubs, which are fantastic, these Callaways that'd be perfect for me. And he was going to give me them on trade price. So I went, well, let's speed this up. I'll buy it now. And then while the deal's available, and then obviously move from there. And that's again what I think, it's the same analogy. It's what Leeds United are doing. This was a player that they might have looked at in the summer, but it becomes available in January. You go, let's pull the trigger now, and that's what they're doing. Paul's just giving a 3 thumbs up. Ruben says, do you not think we already have 2 strong physical strikers, so maybe should go for a different player profile? No, I think they need. I said in the summer before the window started that this is the sort of player that we need. Not in terms of Strand Larsen. I didn't think that was possible, if I'm being honest. But I thought in January a physical striker is exactly what we need, because we've got DCL, who has been brilliant this season and fantastic. And if he can stay fit for the rest of the year, brilliant. And that's all fantastic. But one, form happens with players. So he's in form right now, which is brilliant. And he's not injured, number 2. And then we've got Nemecha, who had that sort of short spell, didn't he, around like the Aston Villa game and around the Man City game, where Leeds United as a football club actually weren't playing that well. But Nemecha scored, 4 in 4. I don't think he's been as great recently coming on, if I'm being honest. And I think he's hit sort of a slow spell since his injury. And we know with them two as well, the massively injury risk players. And if they both went down at the same time, or even if DCL went down on his own, to be honest, I don't think Nemecha would be able to hold the sort of fort for the team. So I did think Leeds United needed another physical striker in January. As I said, for me, he's absolutely perfect. He honestly, he ticks every box. I know he's been injured a bit this season, but I'm pretty sure his injury record's pretty good. He scored 14 goals in the league last year, so he's proved he's done it before at this level. He's strong, he's quick, he's a good finisher. He's decent in the air. He's 6'3". He can bring people into play. He can take the long pass down, hold it in, and bring other people into play. As I said, he matches for me every attribute. He's 25 years old as well. Perfect age range, as we talked about, to go for. He fits the bill exactly for what we need for me. As I said, this is why I think it's the Leeds United will push it, because it's just so perfect for us, in my opinion. But it will be for a lot of clubs. As I said, Newcastle bid £60 million for this guy. Literally, 5-6 months ago in the summer transfer window, and obviously Wolves rejected that. It's not going to be that sort of fee now for him, just based on where Wolves are heading. Obviously, going to the Championship, your players are naturally not worth as much. But I still think you'd be expecting decent money. I think if this was to go ahead, you're looking at 30-40 million quid. I think, to be honest, I think that's the sort of fee you're looking at. And people have said in the chat maybe Perau's involved in that deal, and I think for a lot of obviously the clubs that have been linked with Perau naturally have been Dutch clubs and Championship clubs, whereas potentially Wolves are the only club that maybe would take Perau, because you think You give him 6 months in the Premier League, let him adapt to this Wolves team. Obviously, they're going to stick with Rob Edwards, you would expect, going down into the Championship. And then, of course, and then naturally, then he can hopefully get you back up as well. But he also then gets his opportunity in the Premier League for a club where he's not actually playing for us in the Premier League at this moment. So I do think it would be more sense. Get Strand Larsen in, more mobile than Nemecha, together with DCL would be fearsome. I completely agree, mate. Louis says we should stay away from players like Larsen. Disagree. Leeds were going to spend 30+ million on Muniz and even that winger, but they didn't, and they got Okafor. That cost us a lot less, but I'm sure there's a lot of money. Even if Leeds are staying not. I think we're really tight on PSR, mate. I think we're really tight, and there is absolutely no way, in my opinion, unless there's huge sales in January, which there won't be. There is absolutely no way this is not a loan with an obligation. Like, this will definitely be a loan with obligation to buy. It won't be an option. Wolves will definitely want an obligation, because if they're doing an option, what's the point for them? They might as well just wait till the summer and have him for the rest of the season. So if this deal happens, it will definitely be a loan with an obligation to buy for Leeds. And as I said, I would imagine it's 30 to 40 million quid, and maybe it's got a pro involved. I'm not sure. It depends if they want him. And obviously, as you said, Miller, we were linked with Munoz in the summer transfer window as well for about the £30 million mark of 100%. Well, that was obviously true. I think Strand Larsen's a much better player than Munoz, in my opinion. Muniz, should I say? I think that I think he's got a lot more to his game, and he's actually scored a lot. He has Muniz, should I say, has never had a season like sort of Strand Larsen had last year. I think Strand Larsen's a much better player in my personal opinion. I think Muniz, I was okay with the signing of the summer, but I've never massively rated him. I think he's very scrappy in front of goal, and I think he's 24, so he's maybe a year younger than Strand Larsen, but I don't know. Strand Larsen, me, looks such much more obvious sign if we can get him, and he's a much better player. And I actually think they'd be demanding the same amount of money. Like, if you can get Strand Larsen for sort of 30 to 40, or Muniz for 30 or 40, it's Strand Larsen all day for me, every day. Put it this way, if Wolves were mid-table and he had 8 goals, we'd have no chance of signing him. Unlike DCL, without his injury record, we wouldn't get him. Yeah, exactly. You bang on. You bang on, BMG. This is down to the fact that that basically, as I said, it's an opportunity in the market based on how Wolves have performed this season. 100%. You bang on. That's how this deal is happening. At the start of the season, Leeds will looked at players. They'll have already started looking for the summer naturally, but they'll have looked for options in the January transfer window. That's instantly what they would have done. And Buonanotte, obviously, maybe they'd have thought, let's see how it goes with Chelsea. He may come in January. At the end of the transfer window, there is absolutely no way in a million years that Leeds United have been looking at Strand Larsen. Absolutely no chance, because either they'd have thought Wolves would keep him for the rest of the season, or if he'd have been doing really well, he'd have been good and had a season like he was having last year. In January again, there'd be bids going in for like 60 million quid, because there was in the summer. As I said, Newcastle were there for 60 million pounds for this lad in the summer. So, you know, if DCL breaks down as a regular, as with his regular history, we are in the mud. Exactly, Ray. Which is why someone like Strand Larsen coming in would be perfect. As I said, for me, and this is probably quite a big statement, I honestly genuinely think if we were to sign Strand Larsen in January, for the first time, I think we might even make a video on this channel thinking that we are definitely staying up then. I just think we'd have too many goals in the team, and because we're playing this 5-back system, we're not conceding as many as we once were. And we're playing quite well at this moment. So him coming in would be huge. I agree we need a striker. We depend hugely on DCL, and Nemecha is quite unproven and also injury prone. We are slightly vulnerable up front. If Pro goes, it's perfect. Even if Pro doesn't go, mate, I don't think, to be honest with you, I don't think Pro in this Leeds United team's a striker. I think if you were ever going to play Pro, he's probably more of a number 10 as opposed to a number 9. So, you know, I'm not even sure on that. And as I said, again, even if they can't get Pro off the books, I think they'd look at trying to do it anyway, in my opinion. Gavin says, seen something yesterday that Jørgen Strand Larsen has a 25 million release clause even the summer if relegated. No idea if that's true or not. I would imagine something like that exists, mate. For a lot of these top players, like, if we're being totally honest, mate, in Stack's contract, in any majority of the signs we made in the summer, some of the big additions that we made in the summer, there will be release clause in their contracts, and this was confirmed in the summer anyway by obviously by Robbie Evans when he did that interview. He said there's release clauses, and he said there's not going to be loan clauses like there was last time, but there is release clauses in contracts, and there'll be just a bit more than we paid for them, which is obviously why it's important you don't go down. We remember obviously last time we went down, even the players that we didn't have loan clause in, we still had Rafinha was I think a release clause of 21 million. And again, when we look at why this is becoming an option for Leeds United and why Leeds United look at this and could potentially get Strand Larsen in January, it's down to the fact that he probably has something like that in his contract, where I would be sure that Strand Larsen has maybe something like a 25 million release clause, and Wolves go, well, we're going to go down regardless because they know they're down. So let's sell him to Leeds. We might get 30 to 35 million for him. And then, of course, we don't have to lose him for 25 in the summer. It kind of makes sense on their level, which, again, is why it's become an opportunity in the market and why Leeds United can pursue it. He's a very good Premier League striker, says, Garen, is it? Garen says a very good Premier striker. Agreed. Ruben Vargas, Noah Lang, Strand Larsen. Yes, I mean, they'd be decent players. Going to talk about that in the show at 8 p.m. that we always do at 8 p.m. So if you are knocking around again at around 8 p.m. this evening, we'll go live and talk all about these rumours. The Noah Lang one, for a bit of a preview, though, of what's going to happen at 8 p.m. is a no-go. Noah Lang has reportedly had, I mean, everywhere he's been, he's had issues and fallouts, and he's come, from all accounts, he's quite an arrogant sort of individual thinking sort of player. Not there's any look that's some of the best players in the world like that, but Leeds United won't go near a player with that sort of past. They just won't do it. Perau will go in late in the transfer window. Middlesbrough circling. Shark effects. Yeah, I think Perau. I don't know if Perau leaves. I think the situation with Perau is they just got to. What's happened here? Is it? Oh, it's fine. But I think with Perau, the situation will be is that I think we just need to have an honest conversation with him, and especially if Strand Larsen comes in, it knocks him further down the pecking order. And I just think sort of Daniel Farke just should have a conversation with Perau and go, look, this is where we're at with our strikers. You probably now, if Strand Larsen was to come in, you probably have fourth choice number 9. I don't really think that, and you're not going to play football, so I would suggest you go out on loan. I think that honest conversation would need to happen. I think it probably needs to happen anyway, in truth, because I still don't see him playing much football. Ipswich is a good bet for Perau, in my opinion. 3 teams battling for top 2. Perau guarantees promotion, in my opinion. Well, yeah, because part of this, I think, as well, and it's just come to me, actually, this, which is you're absolutely right on, is that, and part of saying what I last said sort of proves this as well. I think if Leeds were to sign Strand Larsen in January, I think Perau then thinks, I can't then get into this Leeds United team because there's 3 strikers ahead of me, so it isn't going to happen. And I think that's been the only thing really stopping Perau leaving the football club, is that we haven't really had anyone. He's always sort of maintaining, probably in his head, that, well, them 2 are injury-prone strikers. If they go down, it's me that's going to start. And he's been blocking, I think, Leeds United selling him in January, because I think if Leeds had everything their own way, Leeds would have already sold Perau in January, or would be looking at moving Perau on in January. But the thing that stopped them is that Perau actually wants to stay at the football club. But of course, if Perau then becomes 4th choice, potentially his position changes and then he wants to leave the football club. So that's something to bear in mind. Noah Lang, that's so 2021, 100%, mate. We shouldn't be going near him. Might as well go for Brian Kent as well. Yeah, we're back in them rumours, aren't we? Larsen, 19 game, 1 goal. How do people rate him so much? We've explained it enough, mate. He also scored 14 goals last season, so, you know. Good day, Leeds folk. I'm not sure what that means. Noah Lang is class. He might be, but it's just, and I know people really like Noah Lang, and I've seen it on Twitter for years, and obviously when we've done this channel, I think we've mentioned Noah Lang before, but he's always had this attitude problem. It's been reported literally every single club he's been at. And if you listen to sort of what Berrien Cross said a few days ago on the Square Ball, he was talking a lot about sort of the sort of characters that Leeds United and sort of characters. So Leeds United won't bring in a character like that to football club. I'd be absolutely amazed. And actually, I think this sort of idea that we're going down this path of bringing in players that with no egos and who are all about the club first and that sort of thing has paid massive dividends for Leeds United. And I think the reason we've got such a great team spirit at this moment in time in the football club, and you can see that, in my opinion, fully on the pitch as well, is because of how Leeds United have recruited in terms of a personality of player that they've brought in. So for me, as I said, it's a no-brainer that they probably won't go for Noah Lang, to be honest. Interesting that neither Munoz nor Paxao are pulling up trees so far. Yeah, Paxao had a moment, didn't he, where he was doing quite well, I think, for Marseille, but fundamentally he's not been that great. And obviously Munoz has got injured, hasn't he? Or Muniz. I keep calling him Munoz, I don't know why. We don't Perau go into Wolves as part of the deal. He will get game time this season. If they go down, he'd be a ready red championship machine, says SW LUFC. Yeah, I agree. I think And I think the fact that he would then be fourth choice striker means Perau would be more likely to leave the football club. And potentially Leeds United know that. Potentially Leeds United know that they've got a player in Perau who's probably worth maybe £10 million on the open market, something like that, just based on what he did last season. He's obviously been top scorer in the Championship. And actually bringing in Strand Larsen, someone like him, again, like we talked about, potentially pushes a Perau a bit more. Anti-Semitic allegations for Lang too. Yeah, I think I've seen them, mate. I don't know fully enough about that to talk in much detail, but I have seen that. Ludicrous because they look further back than this season. Yeah, no, I know, and yeah. To be honest with you, truthfully, we talked about this yesterday actually, but the recruitment from Leeds United has been in the summer. We obviously, I think we were on the minority, but on this channel we talked about the idea that it wasn't that great, and yes, actually the players we brought in were pretty good, but we just didn't have enough of them. And obviously, I think that was obviously aided by what Perau had said going into that Everton game, where he basically said that Leeds United were going to do a lot of business in the last few days of the transfer window. It didn't really come about, of course, because of like deals like the Buonanotte one fell apart and the Wilson one. But I think we all felt a bit in the summer left a bit like, oh, is that it, sort of thing. Whereas actually, when you look at the players and actually look at how they recruited in the summer, you realise that they've actually recruited really well of the 49ers. And to be honest with you, they've actually recruited really well since they've been in the football club. They really have. So yeah, fair. Fair play to Leeds United. The Square Ball often talk about Leeds United with the no rule. Which I don't want to get demonetised, which is the kind of rules out no Lang. Yeah, exactly, BMJ, exactly. Is there a legit chance we go in for Larsen? Yes, there is, mate. In fact, we actually kind of have gone in for Larsen. We're basically at this moment in time exploring the deal with Larsen and basically seeing if Wolves are willing to do a deal with us in January. Obviously, we know they don't have that sort of money. They'd have to make some unbelievable amount of sales in the summer. It just will not happen at all. But if we are going to structure a deal, it will be a loan with obligation. And they're not stupid enough. It will be a loan with an obligation if Leeds United stay in the Premier League. Similar to the one we obviously had with Weston McKennie when we signed him. And I think it was loan with obligation if Leeds United stayed up. Leeds United, on the off chance we do go down from this position, can't afford to put in a deal, loan with obligation to buy no matter what, because we cannot sign Strand Larsen for 30 to 40 million pounds in the summer if we go down. I mean, that would be just horrendous for the Bucks. It would be so bad. We just wouldn't be able to afford to do it. With the Buonanotte signing, I don't see the point of the Vargas signing. Yeah, I don't think I think the Vargas one's agent talk, if I'm being honest. I don't think he's. I think that obviously I think Sevilla want to move him out of their squad, and I think obviously naturally he's going to link himself to Premier League clubs, and I think we're just one of them that's involved in that. Celtic talking to Perau. Is this who said that, Gavin? Let me have a look. A Celtic talking to Perau. Let me search it. I know Celtic had a striker or a winger fall through today because they were going to sign this winger that's now going to Sunderland. So let me have a look. Let me have a look. I'll quickly search Perau on my phone and see if that's come out. Perau. I don't see it just yet, but as I said, there is, for me, it's very unlikely that if Leeds United in the summer, Leeds United in January, if Leeds United sign Strand Larsen, Perau will leave the football club because he's the one stopping the move at this moment. But when he goes down to fourth choice striker, he'll leave the football club. Gavin says Sky Sports are saying it. Right, okay, wow. So yeah, there you are then. So that probably actually means that Strand Larsen maybe even further down the line than we think as well. Interesting. But I think that, yeah, Perau, if we sign Strand Larsen, I'm quite willing to say this on record actually. If we sign Strand Larsen in January, Perau will leave in January because Perau will think he's fourth choice striker and he will want minutes and therefore he will leave. By the way, Harrison, has Harrison gone yet? I'll only believe it when I see it wearing up the shirt. Gavin says it's not the only club. I need to have a look at this. Sky Sports. Let me find it. Sky Sports, Perau. Let's have a look. Gavin, Celtic will be a good move for Perau. Weirdly, he's only on 15 grand a week. I said only, but that's low for Premier League player. Yeah, it is. Yes, it is. I can't find that Perau tweet, but I don't disbelieve you. And I think, as I said, we've gone around in circles a bit here, but in terms of the Perau situation. But Perau will leave in January if we get Strand Larsen, or if we sign a striker in general, really. And it doesn't surprise me that clubs want Joel Perau because I think he has got to offer. I think he is a good finisher, and I think there will be interest for sure. Perau would describe the Scottish League. Yeah, I think Perau would suit playing in. Do you know what Leeds United were last season? Do you know what Leeds United were last season, where we were the outstanding team in the division or one of the best teams in the league? I think he suits a team like that who would dominate in the possession, on the ball loads, and giving him loads of chances. And because we know he's such a good finisher, that's perfect for him. His issue is when you're in a team that are not as one of the best teams in the league, and you've got to rely on his off-the-ball work, and his off-the-ball work, obviously, for Perau isn't very good, which we know because he's not that mobile of a sort of striker and a player, and that's where he falls down. So that's why he was never really going to work. You want the last year's Strand Larsen, but you're getting another version of the player. I disagree, actually. I think he'd come in and do well. I think with these people who are being a bit negative about the Strand Larsen thing, saying that he's obviously had a bad 6 months, do we not remember what had happened to Calvert-Lewin? Like, Calvert-Lewin had been absolutely crap for a few years, actually. I think he'd scored something like 7 goals in about 3 years. And he obviously had that fantastic season under Ancelotti, but that was about 4 years previous. But actually, we've managed to get the best out of Calvert-Lewin by playing to his strengths. And again, I think with Strand Larsen that we could do the same thing again, in my opinion. I do think that. I think Strand Larsen is more likely to move to Forest, given how Dyche prefers to play, and they need one. Yeah, that is one thing, Martin, to mention, and we probably haven't mentioned that. I would imagine if Strand Larsen becomes available, as you talked about, we know that Forest are in for a number 9. They've obviously, they were linked actually to Josh Sargent today, but they're linked to another striker as well that his name sort of forgives me. I can't fully remember who he was. But that is a slight issue for Leeds, is that potentially there's other sort of offers on the table for Strand Larsen, because, as I said, it wouldn't be surprising to me if a La Liga club comes in for him, or another Premier League club, or even one of the top clubs in maybe the Bundesliga or something, and potentially we're gonna have sort of competition for this signing. I don't think that's I think that's completely plausible. I really do. So there we are. I think more Rangers than Celtic. Guehi to City and Glasner leaving in June. Double hit for Palace. Yeah, and I think Palace play someone that we need him to beat. Who did Palace play this weekend? Palace play someone, I think, this weekend that we want them to lose to. And I think, do Palace play against West Ham soon? They might do. No, I don't think they do, actually. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always. We don't usually do impromptu live, but I've absolutely loved it today, and it's obviously nice to have some really sort of positive news to talk about in terms of Strand Larsen. So I hope you've all enjoyed, as always. And as I said, if you could help the channel, I always say this, but if you could help the channel by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, because I'm such a small channel, basically every single like I get, it massively boosts me in the algorithm, because it goes, oh, this lad's an upcoming sort of channel, we'll push it. Whereas obviously if you're a big channel anyway, they just naturally always push it. So the videos that I get more likes on and more subscriptions that come from it, and sort of comments and sort of thing, it just massively pushes me. And I've been asking people to do it recently, and the views have gone through the roof because the likes have been going up. So as I said, YouTube pushes it for me. So if you could do that, that would be massively helpful. And obviously we've talked for about 37 minutes. So if you've just joined in, there's another sort of 35 minutes of sort of talking to get through if you would like to see that. And yeah, but other than that, thanks all for watching. Also, obviously we'll be live again at 8 PM this evening. We'll probably get into a bit of a Fulham preview, and we'll talk about other rumours that have gone on today. As I said, like the Noah Lang thing. We'll see what's going on with this Perau situation. We'll talk about the fact that Jack Harrison's moving on as well. So loads, as I said, there's just loads of football news at this moment. Actually, it's been a much busier January than I thought it might be at Leeds. But there we are. Anyway, thanks all for watching, as always, as I said. And I will see you all later, everybody. Bye for now.